Welcome back to Chicago Independent Television. The fallout from the attack on the Gaza Freedom Flotilla is continuing to settle. We'll now hear a poignant and harrowing interview with a Chicago activist who was aboard the flotilla, where she recounts her experiences of the Israeli attack.
And I will bring to the White House an unshakable commitment to Israel's security. That starts with ensuring Israel's qualitative military advantage.
The Zodiac boats came around 3 o'clock in the morning, circling the ship, and we could see that there were armed soldiers on board. When they started to near the ship, the captain turned sharply to the west and started to move even away from both Gaza and Israeli water to pull further into international waters. The men had all stopped to pray. The rafts came even closer, and they started to throw hooks up overboard to attempt to crawl up from the rafts onto the ship and board the ship. The volunteers who were around the deck, on the fourth deck, would just take the hooks over and then just drop them back onto the ship. So nobody was hurt in the process. It was simply a sort of self-defense mechanism to just drop those hooks back onto the ship, onto the rafts below, and not allow them to crawl up onto the ship. Again, with no negotiation. We had no idea what they were trying to do. There was already firing taking place. There was firing from the rafts. There were sound bombs that were going off. There were tear gas canisters that were being thrown on board. There was plastic or rubber-coated bullets that had been shot all the way around the ship to the fourth and the fifth deck. And at some point, very quickly, they made the transition into live ammunition. So there was live ammunition being shot onto deck and at the volunteers, even prior to commando soldiers being dropped onto the ship. The insinuation or the suggestion in the media that the commandos came on board and at that point they responded to force with force is absolutely untrue. Absolutely untrue. We already had 1 to 2 casualties before the commandos came on deck. And those were casualties, not just injured people. Immediately they went onto the loudspeakers, we did in our ship, and made announcements in Hebrew, in Arabic, and in English, and in Turkish, explaining to the soldiers that they needed to stop firing, stop using violence against us. We would not use violence against them, that we had injured people on board, that we had people who were dead and people who were in need of immediate medical attention, to please stop firing. They made that announcement for an hour and a half straight, with no response from the Israelis, who continued to use force, continued to use violence, continued to shoot. A helicopter came back and actually dropped down the ropes to allow soldiers and commandos to come on board. I could see around the edge and watch them drop down. I was taking pictures of the helicopter, dropping these soldiers, these commando soldiers down, and they came down firing as well. And they came down as soon as they would drop. The men on board would simply seek to grab the weapons and disarm them, and point them away from the people who they were trying to shoot at, and actually throw the weapons overboard. A cameraman about 2 meters away from me was shot twice. I ran over to him. I left my camera sitting on the deck. I jumped over to him, and there was just a profuse amount of blood on the ground, and he was just wailing in pain and had no idea what had actually hit him. And he was speaking only in Turkish and asked me, basically what's happening. As soon as we tourniqueted his arm, myself and another brother carried him downstairs, and as we went downstairs, I looked over to the side of the ship around on the fifth deck, and I could see, that the Israeli soldiers were just showering They were just shooting in every different direction, and by this time there were probably at least visibly half a dozen commandos on deck, you know, and then the men were just running all over the place, you know, and pulling wounded out of the way, and I watched people drop.